Hey, this is Sean with another Nerdgasms.net toy review. Today we're going to be talking about the Battle Damage Knifehead figure from NECA Toys and the Pacific Rim film line. Pacific Rim, for those that don't know, was a blockbuster science fiction monster film that was written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. And it starred Charlie Hunnam, Idris Elba, and Charlie Day. The film's set in the 2020s when Earth is at war with the Kaijus, which are giant monsters that have come from like some sort of interdimensional portal on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. And in order to fight these monsters, the humans created these giant robots, kind of mecha monsters called Jaegers. So this is Series 3 from the hit NECA toy line for the movie. This Series 3 features 4 figures. 2 Jaegers, which are the Russian Jaeger Cherno Alpha and the Japanese Jaeger Coyote Tango. It also includes 2 Kaiju monsters, the Trespasser and the one we're going to be reviewing today, the Battle Damage Knifehead. The Battle Damage Knifehead is the largest of the Category 3 Kaiju, and he features an entirely new body sculpt that's 50% larger than the previous version, with improved detail and articulation. This version of Knifehead also sports over 20 points of articulation and battle damage deco reflecting the injuries it sustained in the fight with Gypsy Danger. As you can see, Knifehead has a large and bulky body, and he's a heavily built kaiju. The most notable feature is the long and broad sharp-ended nose that could easily cut through the armor of a Jaeger. Atop the center of its head resides a blowhole that forcefully expels air when it resurfaces from the water. It has a large shell-like armor on its back, while the rest of its body is similar to a goblin shark in appearance. Knifehead possesses 2 large dominant arms and 2 smaller secondary arms protruding from its belly. Its large arms each have 3 clawed digits, the middle digit being significantly larger. Bright yellow lines run through a pattern across its body, with the rest of its body being a dark gray. Its eyes and the interior of its mouth, however, glow blue. Like Slattern and Scunner, Knifehead's primary forearm bones have fleshless gaps between them, looking like 2 fused arms ending in 3-digit claws. As I said earlier, Knifehead is the largest of the Category 3 Kaijus that was recorded so far. So looking at our figure here, he's got the big bulky arms, the body frame, and as I said before, the 3 claws on the arm. He's got the 4 claws on the inner arm. The figure has really good detail with, as can be seen in the film, the yellow details and the stripes all along his body. Also, looking inside of his mouth, you can see in the translucent paint his blue tongue and the blue inside of his mouth. As different from the original figure, you can see the battle damage when the blue blood that's coming out of him. Looking at the other side of him, you can see the big scaled back that he has. As for articulation, although this is listed as 20 points of articulation, due to its bulk and some of the accessories on him, he really doesn't move that well. When you're looking at the head, the mouth can move up and down, creating a biting type motion. And the head can swivel a little bit, but he can only get a few degrees of motion. He doesn't go all the way around. As for the arms, the main set of arms can swivel on a socket 360 degrees, and it can extend out about 180 degrees, but it doesn't go any further than that, and he can go most of the way back in towards his body. At the elbow, he does have an elbow joint, but it only moves slightly. It barely twists, and it doesn't flex very much. As for the inner arms, again, at where the shoulder socket is, it's a ball and socket joint and can spin around. And it's a fused elbow, so it doesn't remove there. But the wrist does have ability to spin 360 degrees. But it doesn't move side to side. The figure does have some hip twist to it. Not very much. You can turn it a few degrees here, a few degrees there. But nothing more than to really adjust the pose or to readjust the weight to help the figure stand up a little bit. The most articulation it has in the figure is on the legs. The legs can spin almost 360 degrees, but you can't open the thighs up. It just spins. As for at the elbow has a definite knee bend joint. That's probably one of the most articulated features on this figure. And he does have a decent amount of motion into the ankle. And that's nice when you're trying to pose him, because he is a pretty bulky, top-heavy figure. So when you're trying to stand him up, you need to be able to move and position the legs a lot in order to find the right balance. And having the ankles that twist and move and the knees that bend really well really helps that. Especially considering that the tail is flexible material, but it doesn't have any sort of joint. So you can't move the tail back a little bit. So when comparing the two Kaiju from this line together, is the Trespasser and Knifehead both have the same exact buck. They just differ in the paint applications and the head. And part of the reason is both of the figures were sculpted from the digital files from ILM that were used directly in the movie. And in the movie, the Knifehead and Trespasser both use the same CGI bodies. So you're going to end up with the same figure. Even though Knifehead does look bigger than the Trespasser, it's probably because his head is so much larger. And here you can see him next to a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figure just to kind of get the scale and the size. And he's, I believe, in the 8-inch figure scale, which is a very large figure, and it's really bulky. He's got a lot of plastic to him and a lot of weight on him. And you look around and you could just see the paint app, and it's really well done. NECA's really perfected their paint applications on all of their recent figures. It's really phenomenal. He had some issues in shipping where you can see a little bit where his knife head poked through the plastic on the front, and where some of the other figures use some sort of cheap paint and would have gotten some sort of paint rub, this one doesn't have it at all. And you can kind of see a close-up, and the paint looks really good, and almost looks like real scales, real scaly skin. So the one real big criticism I have is trying to stand him up. It takes a little bit of finagling to get him to stand up. But once you do, he is pretty solid standing there. The other thing I have to say is that there isn't a ton of articulation. I mean, he's beautifully sculpted. The sculpt is just absolutely stunning. You can look through this, and so it's really realistic. Looking at it, you get a better view of the figure than you could ever have gotten from anything in the movie, and just see some of the coolness of the figure himself. But he does have limited playability, because unlike what it says in the ads, you can't really recreate a lot of the scenes, because he doesn't have that good of articulation based on just the bulky body type. But for me, I'm just going to have him sitting on a shelf looking like a badass on my Kaiju shelf. So he's going to be absolutely perfect looking there, and he's going to look really good next to Trespasser. But I don't know if he would do so well for playability purposes. But all in all, this is a really great figure, and for the size and for how big he is and how good the paint app is and how well done this figure is, he was a really good deal for what he cost. So I definitely recommend checking him out, especially if you're a fan of Kaiju or the Pacific Rim movie. You won't be disappointed. This is Sean, and this was another Nerdgasms.net review. And hopefully check us out on our YouTube page, nerdgasms.net, DOTNET.